أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وما بكم من نعمة فمن الله ثم إذا مسكم الضر فإليه تجأرون ثم إذا كشف الضر عنكم إذا فريق منكم بربهم يشركون ليكفروا بما آتيناهم فتمتعوا فسوف تعلمون ويجعلون لما لا يعلمون نصيبا مما رزقناهم تالله لتسألن عما كنتم تفترون ويجعلون لله البنات سبحانه ولهم ما يشتهون صدق الله العلي العظيم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي يا رب صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. May I just humbly ask you to just come forward. My respected elders, friends, brothers, with the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I and you all came to the masjid and we offered Salatul Dhuhr with the congregation. And now, at this very moment, we are still sitting in the house of Allah in the circle of interpretation of Quran. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept these noble activities in His court. And may He make all these noble activities means of our forgiveness and means of coming very close to our Creator and means of coming close to our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. My respected elders, the verses which I just recited before you, the foremost verse which I recited, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, whatever you have is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every ni'mah that we possess is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We should keep this in our minds at all times. Whatever I have is from Allah. It be wealth, health, anything that we possess is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The reality of shukr is, foremost thing is that we recognize every ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We admit that whatever I have, I possess is Allah's. It's not mine. It's Allah's. Allah gave me. This is the foremost thing. We recognize it. We recognize every ni'mat of Allah from our hearts. That this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to say that no, this is from my own self, I've gained it. This is an act of the kafir, non-believer. Qarun, what did he say? Innama utituhu ala ilm. Through my own skills, I've achieved all this and I've gained all this wealth. My own skills. Who says this? A non-believer. A believer never says anything such. A believer always, he puts his effort in everything, but he says at the end is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah gave me the tawfiq, Allah gave me this ability and I did it. Without the ability, fazal, tawfiq of Allah, I could not have done anything. So foremost thing is that we recognize every ni'mat, every blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from our hearts and say this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the second thing is that verbally, we do shukr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahumma lakal hamd, wa laka shukr. Say Allah, all the hamd, all the praises are belong to you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you deserve our praise. You are the one who deserve the praise. So verbally, second thing in paying gratitude to Allah is that verbally we do shukr. We remain thankful to Allah that, Ya Allah, this is from you. Verbally, all the time, we should thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the third pillar of shukr is the practical. The ni'mah, our ears are our ni'mat of Allah. Eyes are the ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How we should use this ni'mah? In the obedience of Allah. When we use every ni'mat of Allah, every ni'mat correctly, then it will be the shukr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a practical shukr. If one has a wealth and he is using the wealth in a very correct way and in a lawful way, he spends on his own self and his children, he gives in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the shukr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the shukr. This is the practical shukr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whatever we have, we should say, number one, that this is from Allah. Number two, we should thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala verbally. And number three, we should thank Allah practically that, oh Allah, this ni'mat which you have given to me, I will use it according to your desire, or according to how you want me to use it. So our eyes, our ears, our physically every limb of our body, we should utilize in the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our wealth, it should be used in correct manners and should be used where Allah is pleased with us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly declaring, وَمَا بِكُم مِّن نِعْمَةٍ فَمِنَ اللَّهِ. Whatever ni'mat you possess, whatever you have, whatever blessing you have is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ثُمَّ إِذَا مَسَّكُمُ الضُّرُّ فَإِلَيْهِ تَجْأَرُونَ. In this dunya, a person up and down, it's must in this dunya. In this dunya, a person, if he wants to stay in peace at all times, if he wants to stay healthy at all times, this is impossible. This is impossible. In this dunya, sometimes a person, he is ill, sometimes he's well, sometimes he's, his mood is not so good. Sometimes, he is in a good mood. So these things up and down comes in this dunya. And this is because this is part of our life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the nature of a human being. Allah is mentioning the nature of a human being. ثُمَّ إِذَا مَسَكُمُ الضُّرُّ فَإِلَيْهِ تَجْأَرُونَ. When you are touched by a distress, by a calamity, what do? You turn to Allah and you cry for help. This is the reality. This is the nature of a human being. Although Allah is talking here about the non-believers, although Allah, the background is about the non-believers, but when we look at our own selves, our Muslim brothers, we will find, when they are in a calamity, when they are in problems, what happens? Then they start coming to masjid. When they come to masjid, they turn to, the pious people and they say, make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the nature of a human being. He turns to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look Allah subhanahu, my and your nature is, if someone comes to us and we say, look, now you came when you were in need to me. Now you came when you were in need. Before He never even gave him Islam. This is our nature. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when a person falls into a distress, when he is in problems, when calamities befall on him, what happens? He turns to Allah. Allah doesn't say, well, you forgot me before, now you came when you are in problem. Allah doesn't say that. Allah doesn't turn it away. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He answers our calls and He helps us. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, though Allah is talking, as I said about non-believers, Allah is saying, ثُمَّ إِذَا كَشَفَ الضُّرَّ عَنْكُمْ إِذَا فَرِيقٌ مِّنْكُمْ بِرَبِّهِمْ يُشْرِكُونَ. Allah is saying, when Allah removes your distress, He removes that problem in which you were. What happens? Allah is saying, a group from amongst you start ascribing partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Earlier on, when they were in problem, they turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They asked Allah to remove it. And then what happened? When the problem was removed, then they forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And although this is about the non-believers, but when we look at our own selves, we find many Muslims, when they are in problem, they come to masjid and do everything. And as soon as everything is sorted out, then they just forget everything. They forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They stop coming to masjid. They stop coming. This is the nature of human being. That when he is in good circumstances, he forgets Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when unpleasant circumstances hit him, then he turns to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is saying, لِيَكْفُرُوا بِمَا آتَيْنَاهُمْ. Allah is saying, the removal of our distress is also one of the ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Allah removes someone's problem, this is a ni'mat. Today we don't recognize, there are so many ni'mats of Allah, we don't recognize that this is a ni'mat. There are so many ni'mats of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't recognize. If someone's parents are alive, this is the greatest ni'mat of Allah. Though people, we don't recognize this. When they pass away, then we recognize, oh, this was the ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My dad was alive, my mom was alive. When they are alive, we don't value this ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there are so many ni'mats, Once a pious person, he became ill. He physically, he had a pain in his body, and someone came to visit him, and he said, I came to visit you. He said, this pain which I am going through is because I have not been paying thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Till today I had this ni'mat. I never realized that this is also a ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So today when we are in a ni'mat, we forget that this is ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have our eyes, we can see everything. We have ears, we can hear everything. We have feet, we can walk, and we have hands to hold things. These are the ni'mats. But we don't recognize these are ni'mats of Allah. These are great ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us these ni'mats. We never asked Him. Without us asking Allah, He gave us all these ni'mats. We never asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ears. We never asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us 2 eyes. There are so many people who are born blind. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gave us all these ni'mats without us asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And yet here we don't even recognize these ni'mats. We don't even consider these are the ni'mats of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, oh human being, your nature is, when you are in good circumstances, you forget us. And when unpleasant circumstances, befall on you, then you turn to us. Allah is saying, when we remove your ni'mah, and then you forget us, you forgot that removal of a ni'mat, of a problem is also a ni'mat. Hadith Dawud alayhi salatu wasalam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to Hadith Dawud alayhi salam, "I'malu a'la Dawud shukran." O Al Dawood, or family of Dawood, you pay gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a practical, gratitude. Hazrat Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam, he once said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, he was the Nabi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, Allah, when I do your shukr upon a ni'mah, I feel there is another shukr due on me. Which is that? He said, when I do shukr, this is also a ni'mat of Allah. This is, when you give me the tawfiq to do your shukr, this is also a ni'mat. Then I feel this, another shukr upon me is due. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replied to Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam, "Oh Dawood, now you have recognized the reality of my ni'mat. Now you have done my shukr." When we recognize that, a shukr is due on me, then this is the shukr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we have something and then this thought comes in our mind, now this and the shukr on me to do. I have to shukr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When this thought comes in our mind that I have to do shukr of Allah, this is a shukr. This is a shukr of, you're doing shukr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're recognizing the ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes a problem from us, then we should keep one thing in our mind, this was a ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about many other things, inshallah, if Allah wills, I will shed light on them in our forthcoming dars. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our sitting, and may Allah make means of our forgiveness. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمته.